Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, a murder in Haifa is determined to be a terror attack. Jews find themselves affected by President Trump's fight against radical Islam, and the IDF goes to new lengths to increase security. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. It's just been announced that an Arab assailant who shot and killed an Israeli school bus driver for disabled children this month has confessed to perpetrating a terror attack motivated by anti-Semitism. Investigators say 21-year-old Mohammed Youssef Shinawi now admits to deliberately trying to kill Jews when he shot 48-year-old Guy Kafri in Haifa on January 3rd. According to the indictment, the Muslim suspect is firmly convinced that Jews are legitimate targets for attack because they're infidels. It's believed Shinawi's hate for the Jewish people dates back to the 2006 Second Lebanon War when he was only 10 years old, although he says the catalyst for his murderous attack came after his girlfriend recently accused him of being a Zionist Jew and Jew lover. The confessed terrorist bought an improvised machine gun in late 2015 and decided to find Jewish victims overnight on January 2nd. The following morning, he shot a religious judge, Yehil Iluz, who suffered moderate injuries. He then opened fire but missed a Jewish woman and later killed Kafri by shooting him 3 times in the chest and neck. 2 of Shinawi's friends have been charged on terror-related offenses for helping him to evade capture. He hid in a local mosque and then traveled to Jerusalem to pray at the Islamic compound in the Old City before finally turning himself in to the authorities. It's sometimes said with affectionate humor that Israelis are so outspoken and direct that it's hard for them not to make comments even when something doesn't really involve them. But this time around, the world is only hearing silence when it comes to the Israeli government's response to Trump's ban on Syrian refugees and residents of 7 Muslim-majority nations. When U.S. President Donald Trump first made his vow to ban Muslims during his campaign for office, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly stood against it. But now that it's being enacted, he and his cabinet are remaining uncharacteristically mute, although some of the 22 ministers are saying it's not appropriate for them to comment. But former Deputy Prime Minister, Justice Minister, and ruling Likud party member Dan Meridor says the Jewish people have been at the forefront of the civil rights movement against racism for over 200 years. And he's demanding Netanyahu speak out against the executive order barring Syrian refugees and citizens from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States. Even Israeli President Reuven Rivlin has declined comment, even though he's known for promoting harmonious relations with the Israeli Arab community. Even the major opposition parties are maintaining silence, and only the left-wing Meretz party and the Arab Knesset Political Alliance are vocally opposing the measure. Meridor and others are acknowledging, however, that Israel's now trying to forge strong relations with the new American president, who appears to be highly sensitive to criticism. Well, even if the Israeli government may feel like it's being bound by a diplomatic gag, the Israeli people certainly don't. Lots of locals aren't letting anything get in the way of voicing their opposition to Trump's immigration ban. Protesters gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv to condemn U.S. President Trump's order. They also took the opportunity to slam Israel's own policies against the illegal migration of Africans into the Jewish state.
We're standing here protesting in front of the American Embassy in Tel Aviv on behalf of migrants, immigrants, and refugees in America, Israel, and all over the world against Trump's anti-refugee policies, together with Bibi's anti-refugee policies.
The activists waved signs reading "Refugees and Immigrants Welcome," "Dump Trump, Dump Bibi," and "No Ban, No Walls." Another called on passing cars to honk if you love refugees, to which many drivers responded. The protesters also cited the Jewish history of being slaves and refugees themselves by citing the biblical passage, "For you were strangers in the land of Egypt." One Israeli American told reporters that as a Jew, he's upset over policies that lack morality. Another rally was held in the Israeli capital in Jerusalem, near the Prime Minister's residence and the American consulate. While those gathered stressed that no one takes security and fighting terror more seriously than Israel, they're advocating a more humanitarian approach spotlighting Jewish ethics. It looks like Trump's immigration ban targeting radical Islamist extremism is having an impact on Jewish communities. In fact, several Jewish people born and still living in the 7 blacklisted Muslim-majority nations have been stuck in transit themselves. The highest refugee support and advocacy group is reporting that several Jewish families are now seeing even greater disruptions to their lives while being stuck in transit countries as their asylum requests to go to America remain in limbo. They're not being named, so their application processes won't be affected. Bahaya says one case involves a Jewish Iranian man in his late 20s and his mother, who have been waiting at a temporary third nation for more than a year. The new order is already impacting their hopes of being reunited with 2 of his sisters, who are already in the United States. Hayas was once called the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society and founded to help desperate Jews flee murderous pogroms in Russia and Eastern Europe in the 1880s. Last year, the group helped to process 159 applications by Jews for asylum in the U.S., including 89 from Iran and several from Yemen, both of which are countries banned by Trump. Israel today passed a travel ban of its own, but not against members of any faith, rather those with anti-Semitic and political agendas against the Jewish state. Aaron, what can you tell us about this?
Well, the bill has bipartisan support, and it basically aims to deny sympathy to those that the country deems as enemies of the state.
The Knesset approved a new law that forbids entry to any foreign nationals who promote the boycott, divestment, and sanctions hate campaign against Israel. It also applies to those who are employed by groups that support the movement or are only against the purchase of goods produced in Judea and Samaria. For now, it doesn't include people from abroad who already have residency permits, but the new legislation does enable the nation's Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, who already has the authority to ban people, to make further exceptions. The passage at the same time as the Trump travel ban is coincidental, given that the Israeli bill was first introduced over a year ago. Lawmakers who submitted the draft say there's no reason that BDS leaders and others spreading anti-Semitism in the world and doing everything in their power to harm the Jewish state should be allowed to operate on Israeli soil.
Speaking of controversial legislation, the Knesset is closer than ever to passing a bill into law that would legalize around 4,000 housing units in the West Bank that are allegedly built on privately owned Palestinian land. The legislation known as the Regulation Bill was put on the back burner in December of 2016, as Israeli lawmakers waited for U.S. President Donald Trump to transition into the White House. Now that the move has been made, the Israeli Prime Minister has instructed his coalition to bring the legislation back for its second and third readings in the plenum this week. On Monday morning, a special Knesset committee is set to vote on the bill. The votes come just ahead of the court-ordered demolition of the Amona outpost by February 8th, and residents are hoping the law will further delay the move. The legislation has already received lots of backlash from the international community for allowing Israel to appropriate land for its own use if the owners are not identified. As the Knesset moves closer towards approving the settlement regulation bill, ILTV's Steve Leibowitz took the chance to sit down with the Times of Israel senior analyst Haviv Retik Gur to hear more about even more controversial West Bank legislation.
The text of the bill itself says that the settlers can keep their homes if they settled there in good faith, which is to say they didn't know it was private property. Now the West Bank, it's often hard to know who owns a piece of land in the West Bank because there's a Jordanian land registry that kept some of the Ottoman land registry, and under the British there was a land registry, and the overlap, they don't completely, there are areas in the West Bank that just aren't written down in the registry in any sense. Israel hasn't imposed its civil law in the West Bank because that would be annexation, and so there's no single place where every parcel of land in the West Bank is written down under someone's name, as there is inside Israel's borders. So there are a lot of these conflicts. There are many settlers who landed in a spot, didn't know it was privately owned by somebody, and then somebody makes a claim and they find it in one of the registries, and they go to the court, and the court says, well, we accept this registry, we have since '67, so this is private land. The problem the critics are raising, this good faith thing, you don't let the settlers keep the land if they knew they were settling in private property. They can only do it if they did not know and it was a good faith. But if they know that if they pretend that it was in good faith, they'll keep it, then they'll do it in bad faith and claim it was in good faith, right? In other words, it's encouraging bad faith seizures of land, essentially squatting and theft. And again, not at the level of politics and Palestinian statehood and peace talks and settlement expansion and things like that. That whole debate, that political debate, but at the much sort of more visceral level of just private property. It's essentially the critics fear going to make it easy to grab private property of Palestinians and get away with it.
Simultaneously, the government or ministers in the government, senior ministers, including Naftali Bennett, have been pushing for Ma'ale Adumim first, annexation, and the next stage apparently would be the Jordan Valley. How far along is that move?
At the moment, Netanyahu is opposed. I think the vast majority of the Israeli political system is opposed. Annexing Ma'ale Adumim is a huge step. There's territory, the so-called E1 territory between Jerusalem and Ma'ale Adumim, which is necessary for a Palestinian corridor. If the Palestinians are going to have contiguity and the Ma'ale Adumim becomes part of Israel, and there is a Palestinian state, that corridor is fundamental to Palestinian contiguity.
Connecting, in effect, Judea and Samaria.
Right. So you would create this bubble of Israel, and then there's this land that is still disputed, occupied, and not Israel, and then Israel again in Jerusalem, and you would do this as sort of a piecemeal. You would bring on yourself all of the criticism of an Israeli annexation of the West Bank, legal challenges, International Criminal Court possibly, quite possibly, now that the Palestinians are signed on the Rome Statute, and you would only gain Ma'ale Adumim, which is to say, not a very large. So the idea that you unilaterally annex but don't actually withdraw. There have been even left-wing proposals that Israel pulls out of 95% of the convergence plan that Ehud Olmert ran on in 2006 and won the election, promising Israelis, I will pull out of 95% of the West Bank or whatever it was, and that will be ours. That 5%, which is the settlement blocks, that will be ours, and we're done. And we're not negotiating, we're not talking, and we're not, the Palestinians have this contiguous state, unilateral and safe. We'll hold this little line in the Jordan Valley so that, between us and Islamic State is the IDF, and we're not relying on the Palestinians. So that has already, right, we've had elections on that, and that came really from the left. But the idea is that you would annex but also give up at the same time. Here it's annexation without giving up. I think the costs are great. I think Netanyahu doesn't want it. And we have very good indications that the Trump administration doesn't want that kind of unilateral move from Israel, at least not now. Maybe when Trump gets involved, we'll see some sort of bold step like we've seen now. Whether it's wise or not, we don't know, but certainly bold. So that's where it stands. It's probably frozen. The Hasdara bill, the regulation bill for Amona is moving forward. The Ma'ale Adumim annexation bill is almost certainly not moving forward.
Aviv Goreteg.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us at ILTV.
Thank you.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is again making it clear he wants to see the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv move to Jerusalem following criticism from Republicans here in the country. But curiously, the premier is still not mentioning any specific time frame. The head of the Republicans' Overseas Israel Branch, Attorney Mark Zell, made public statements accusing Netanyahu of dragging his feet over the proposed move. He's insisting the only reason U.S. President Donald Trump is proceeding cautiously is because of concerns raised by Israeli officials. Netanyahu is addressing the matter in general terms, although he's making no mention of those allegations.
ובהזדמנות הזאת אני רוצה להעביר בצורה חד משמעית שעמדתנו הייתה מאז ומעולם וגם עכשיו ובכל רגע ששגרירות ארצות הברית צריכה להיות כאן בירושלים. ירושלים היא בירת ישראל וראוי שלא רק השגרירות האמריקנית תהיה כאן אלא שכל השגרירויות תעבורנה לכאן ואני מאמין שבמהלך הזמן רובן אכן תגיע הנה. תגענה הנה לירושלים.
Israeli officials are on the record saying they don't want the embassy move to be rushed, but the issue reportedly never even came up during Netanyahu's first 30-minute telephone call with the new U.S. president, and now the White House says it's only just beginning to discuss the matter. Palestinians say the move would kill off any prospects for peace because they want the east side of Jerusalem for their future state. The relocation could also damage the stronger relations Israel's quietly been building with the Sunni Muslim world. The Arab League of 22 member nations just came out with a statement voicing its hopes that Trump will reconsider the proposal entirely. For now, we'll all just have to stay tuned to see what happens during Netanyahu's upcoming summit at the White House in February. Israel's home to a huge variety of different kinds of entertainers, but our next guest is special even among that list. Lazy Gordon is an ex-pro basketball player who today is an international entertainer. He writes, sings, and plays piano in his own shows.
Yeah, it's you that I'm trying to find. I wish you were there on the other side. Lord knows how many times I tried. Every time I seek, you just go and hide. After all these days of trying, I realize this is going one way.
He joins us today to tell us more about his new show, which is based on his true and often comically strange life story, Live Effect. Thank you so much for coming in,
Natasha,
Lazy.
look at you, girl. You're looking great. Thank you for having me. Appreciate that.
So first off, what the name of your show? Tell us about this, and also your name itself, Lazy Gordon. That stands out.
During the show, and it's also for people not only in Israel but worldwide, I tell how I switched 4 times from Eliezer to Alan to Laser to Lazy, okay, through my life and my basketball career.
So your first name was Eliezer?
Eliezer. That's how I was born in
okay.
New York City in 1965. But I'll tell you, the Live Effect, I had to actually go to the dictionary because in Hebrew, the name of the show is called something with a phenomena, which I don't think I am. So I had to look in the dictionary and find some subsidiary word that would actually fit. And then I looked at side effect, and I said, okay, that's side effect, that's like a phenomena, so we'll call it Live Effect. Because the show is so surprising and so strange, and so, you know, it takes like half an hour sometimes for the audience to actually understand what's going on and figure this man or things out. It's just amazing how mesmerized they are.
So this show, from what I understand, is in large part about your life story, right? Which is pretty interesting. You were first a basketball player, and then you decided to become an entertainer. What made you choose to do that?
Well, the show came. I've been working on being a comedian ever since I got kicked out of class. Every class I got kicked out for making jokes and stuff, and and making jokes on every team I played, and I was always a funny guy. But the thing is, the show is the special thing about the show is the fact that I can actually decide with the audience if we're going to use my life story or not, because there's a lot of improv there. So my life story is like my piano. It actually protects me as a stand-up comedian. I can always fall back on my life story if it's interesting enough for the audience.
So what would be the most interesting part of your life story that we could see in the show, or maybe not see in the show?
Well, I don't know how interesting it is, but it's damn entertaining. And I think the fact that I have the people looking like fish, getting caught, looking at me like trying to figure me out, and then no one leaves, and there's like silence and laughter, and somebody sheds a tear. It's just a blessing for me after being 30 years a musician with a band, never being connected to my audience just like I am now when I'm solo on stage and vulnerable. And I open up because I have nothing to hide. So when I open up and nothing to hide, they help me with my songs. They come in, they never heard my songs, and they're singing my songs, and they're helping me out. And it's just amazing.
And I understand that a lot of it's improv in the sense that you make songs up on the scene,
on the spot,
right?
yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, what I do is after we get warmed up, I ask for the people to give me a word. And I get like 4 or 5 words. It depends on the crowd that day. And then immediately I make a song from that. And,
It's like freestyling, but with the piano.
Yeah, with the piano, we make style, and they help me out with the beat sometimes. It just depends on the crowd. And I also bring somebody up on stage for another song that he helps me out. He plays the bass, so I can take a solo, because I don't get to take a solo because I do the bass mostly. So it's a very versatile show. It's amazing, Natasha, how every time I'm in a different show, different setting, different people, It's the same backbone, same songs, sort of, same routine jokes that I know what I'm going to do, but sometimes I might not use them because if the crowd is giving you something to eat off, then you're going to,
So it's very interactive in many
totally,
senses.
Totally. It's amazing. It's like therapy.
Right. Interesting. Okay, therapy, entertainment. I think that I could use some of that. So where and when will you be showing?
Well, in Israel right now, we're performing all over the country. If you go to lazygordon.com, or for Israeli viewers, lazygordon.com, you can see all the shows, and you can also get videos and all the TV appearances that I've made, and the idea behind it and the concept. But we're looking to go to the States, and in Australia, I'm going back to Melbourne, where I started this in 2015. And I hope to take my show out there and bring something unique, something totally not the way you're expected to see as far as a comedian or musician. Sometimes it's like a workshop. Sometimes people hug, it's just amazing.
Beautiful. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the show myself.
You're
you better
invited.
send me a ticket.
Totally.
And cool. Thank you so much for coming
I get a ticket. You probably have 5 boyfriends. I'll send you more.
I don't know about that, but I'll take some more tickets.
Yeah, you have as many tickets as you want. Thank you very much for having me.
So guys, to learn more, go to lazygordon.com.
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
That's what you said.
Thank you.
Israel may be a step closer towards decriminalizing marijuana, but that acceptance is not being extended towards cigarette smokers. Today, nearly 20% of Israelis over the age of 21 smoke, and the nation-state of the Jewish people is no longer having it. In fact, it looks like the government might actually finally start enforcing the anti-tobacco plan it passed back in 2011, while imposing even stronger measures to discourage smoking. The health ministry just declared its intentions to make all cigarette advertising illegal and outlaw even more public places like open-air stadiums where it's been tolerated. Other smoke-free zones will be expanded, such as those near schools or playgrounds. They're also planning to crack down on any restaurants or bars that maintain separate rooms catering to their nicotine-addicted patrons. About 8,000 Israelis die of smoking-related illnesses each year, including around 700 who were only exposed to secondhand smoke. The ministry is also launching special campaigns aimed at helping 2 specific sectors quit. A whopping 40% of Israeli Arab men smoke, while even slightly higher numbers of male Israeli soldiers and 32% of their female counterparts have picked up the habit by the time they're discharged from the military. Now this is interesting. There's a brand new smartphone with the best security ever seen that everyone wants to have, but it's only being given to the Israeli Defense Forces. In fact, this is the very first smartphone the IDF ever launched itself, and it's just been unveiled for the rest of us to envy. It supports both 4G and military networks that let troops safely send classified images, text messages, and other data from the field, without fears of security breaches. The development is all part of a $100 million deal Israeli defense officials signed with Motorola in 2014 for the company to design new encrypted smartphones for military use over the next 15 years. According to terms of the contract, the new smartphones are waterproof and dirt-resistant with 8-megapixel cameras, along with the usual touchscreens and GPS capabilities. Their superpowered batteries are also believed to last for up to 400 minutes of actual use and 500 if the device is in standby mode. Truth be told, I think we all wish we had what can only be called the hottest smartphone of the year. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. We recently learned of the high rates of smoking in Israel and how the government is finally acting on anti-smoking legislation passed 6 years ago. So today's word is ashan, meaning smoke. While we stereotypically think of cigarettes when we hear the word ashan, that's of course not the only place where there is ashan. There's ashan when you smell something burning, there's ashan when your car engine overheats, and there's ashan when you and your friends are crowded around a warm fire in the summer. Just remember, smoke never rises without fire, so make sure you stay safe. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight should be cloudy with a chance of light rain and a low of 47 or 8 degrees Celsius. You can expect occasional rains tomorrow and a temperature drop to a high of 59 or 15 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.78 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.